make believe they are? Or are they telling us some story?
Very true.
It looks like Darren's in a cloud somewhere.
I am sitting in the entry of my home, which is my designated place for consistency. It's my safe place. I feel at home here, and definitely looking forward to next week. So it'll be strange but welcomed.
No offense, but the entry to your home also doubles as the exit from your home. So which are you trying to do?
True. Depends on the day.
I was trying to make sure I have the picture of the Pope in the background here since I'm doing the invocation, but I have a picture of Pope Paul coming out of the White House with Jimmy and Rosalind Carter.
All right, ready to go.
It's important to maintain my Rotary membership now more than ever because Rotary is an organization that is dedicated to helping people in the community. It's apolitical in nature, and it does good things to help citizens. And I think that what could be more important than having something that unites us in a period of really strong division in this country.
Membership is choice, right? Who do I want and choose to engage with? How can I contribute and be part of something bigger than myself?
Why I'm staying in Rotary and why I've stayed has evolved over the years, and I think the main aspect of that is I truly enjoy the fellowship. It's a great group of people. It's a bunch of community leaders that you would never have the opportunity to spend an hour with every Tuesday.
That sense you have in the room of people who want to be part of something that moves the world forward in a meaningful way, it really is impactful from the person to person and then also country to country.
Maintaining my Rotary membership today is more important than ever. What Rotary offers when it's not a pandemic, the value of Rotary is critical. The resources, the people brought together to connect together to provide value to our community is all the more important today than ever.
Rotary is like family, and you don't leave your family when times are tough. You do your part, and our part is paying our dues and staying as involved as we can right now during this pandemic.
Welcome, members of the Rotary Club of Milwaukee. I am Club President Darren Miller, President and owner of JM Construction. As we gather virtually today, as always, we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, Jeff Remsek, Senior Public Affairs Advisor at Michael Best Strategies, will give our invocation today. Jeff?
Thank you. As a past president, you may remember that Uncle Buck and Aunt Lily frequently informed my remarks. And so I was talking with Uncle Buck and Aunt Lily the other day as I prepared for today's invocation. And Uncle Buck told me that he thinks Aunt Lily's getting a little hard of hearing. So he tried a little experiment. And Buck started about 40 feet away, and he said, "Hey, Lil, what's for dinner tonight?" And there was no response. So he moved up to 30 feet and asked the same question and got no response. And so then he went into the dining room about 20 feet away and said, "Hey, Lil, what's up for dinner tonight?" No response. So finally went right in the kitchen and stood right behind her and said, "Hey, what's up for dinner?" And then Aunt Lily turned around and said, "For the fourth time, chicken." But nonetheless, it did remind me of one of Aunt Lily's sort of admonitions, which I'll sort of use today, which was open your mouth only if what you're about to say is more beautiful than silence. So with that advice in mind, let's take a moment to reflect in silence about what's beautiful in our lives today before we break bread and enjoy the fellowship that is really at the heart of Rotary. So just a few moments. That's it. Amen. Dig in.
Darren, you're muted.
Darren, you're muted.
Apologies. Thank you, Jeff, for bringing that to us. Next, we will be running through our club business. First, I'd like to say thank you to our members who contributed to our Rotary Now More Than Ever video series that played at the start of the program. I'd also like to say thank you to all of the volunteers who helped with the neighborhood cleanup in the Johnson's Park and along the Milwaukee River on Saturday. Rotary did make a difference. There are two upcoming opportunities to volunteer at the Milwaukee Rotary Centennial Arboretum. That's coming up in May. The Rotary Arboretum, of course, was our club's gift to the community on the occasion of our centennial. And this volunteer project is an important opportunity for us as Rotarians to demonstrate our ongoing commitment. We need 60 to 90 hours of volunteer time. So bring your friends and your family out to assist this fun project. Volunteers will be working to protect young trees by securing mesh and stakes around the trees on May 8th and May 22nd from 10 a.m. to noon. Sign up using the link in the speaker survey email. And the volunteers will also be needed to prepare materials for that project on Wednesday, May 5th. You again can find more information in the link coming out after this program. Many of our members have shown a commitment to deepening their understanding of issues of racial equity and disparities. We are currently reading The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone and How We Can Prosper Together by Heather McGee. The first discussion will take place on May 20th. Look for the speaker survey email for a link to sign up. The Rotarian tours of the MSO Grand Theater scheduled for tomorrow have been very popular. There's still spots left, so sign up to attend. You'll find details in the post-meeting email as well. This week is World Immunization Week. And so we want to thank the 51 members of Rotary who have contributed $9,880 to our Stop Polio Now campaign. A generous match from the Zilber Family Foundation will double your gift. Currently, we are just $120 shy of the $10,000 match, which will then be tripled by the Gates Foundation. So again, a $100 gift becomes a $600 investment in fighting polio. If you haven't had a chance to donate yet, there will be a link to donate in the survey email that you will receive following this program. Join us on Thursday to hear from Shannon Ross. Shannon Ross served 17 years in the Wisconsin prison system for a massively stupid act of revenge, as he describes it, when he was a teenager. He created the community in 2014 to help prisoners prepare to return home and has run it ever since with the invaluable help of his friends and family. Look for that program on this Thursday's snack program. And yes, it's finally going to happen. We are going to meet in person next week. Yesterday, you should have received an email sharing details on what to expect when we return to Memorial Hall next week. Please take a look at that email and RSVP if you plan to attend. Of course, we will also continue with our live stream. And in case some of you saw the speaker survey hit your inbox at 1 a.m. this morning instead of 1 p.m. this afternoon and wondered, how could I possibly take a speaker survey on a program I've yet to watch? The answer is easy. Clearly, the three amazing women we have presenting today need no introduction, and they deserve a check in that excellent box based solely on their reputations and the amazing work they've done in our community and beyond. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of our discussion today. Dr. Joan Prince retired in March as the Vice Chancellor of Global Inclusion and Engagement at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. In 2012, President Barack Obama nominated Prince as an alternate representative to the 67th General Assembly of the United Nations with the honorary rank of ambassador. She has also served on the Civic Nonpartisan Board of the host committee of the 2020 Democratic National Convention in Milwaukee, as president of Tempo International, as board member and governance chair of the Council on Foundations, and as board chair of the Urban Libraries Council. Locally, she has served on the board of trustees for the Greater Milwaukee Foundation and the Milwaukee Public Library. The Network Journal selected Prince as one of its 25 influential Black women in business for 2020. And she has been a fixture on the Milwaukee Business Journal's Power Brokers list. With that, Dr. Prince, welcome.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and Rotarian Miller. Thank you for that very kind introduction. I appreciate it. More importantly, thank you for your leadership as club president. So thanks for that. Let me just take a quick moment to also thank our absolutely wonderful executive director of Milwaukee Rotary, Mary McCormick. As always, Mary, thank you for all that you do. And also, as the young folks like to say, a shout out to Rotarian Jackie Hurd Barber for just having your fingerprint on this program as well. So thank you. Hello, everyone. I can't wait to see some of you in person starting next week. So, thank goodness for that. This is a very special presentation for me personally, because I get to do this with what I like to call two of my community sisters. Their names and their work are so very familiar to you. But these are truly two leaders who have chosen to not only get their feet wet, but to immerse their ethics, their morals, their personal beliefs, and professional journeys in the world of philanthropy. And what I always like to say is that they don't work at community, they work with community. And since we're talking about strategies today, I think you're going to hear a lot of that kind of strategy coming from both of them. So my first community sister here, JoAnne Anton. JoAnne is the director of charitable giving for Herb Cole Philanthropies, like we didn't know. And Herb Cole Philanthropies, of course, is Senator Cole's expanded commitment to education, economic opportunity, and quality of life in Wisconsin. So welcome, JoAnne. It's great to see you, and it's great to have you here, and feel free to unmute. My other community sister who is here with us is Ellen Gilligan. Ellen, she is the president and CEO of the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, and as I like to say, the greatest community foundation in the world. She, along with GMF, are treasured structures in building community and supporting opportunities that benefits advancement for all. So welcome, Ellen, welcome, JoAnne. We're going to have fun today. So I'm excited, if you would, ladies, let me sort of set the context for our listeners and for our viewers, what we're going to walk through. We all know, right? We all know that the need in community is vast. We all know that we can't do it alone. We're going to hear a little bit about what partnerships mean and what they can do in this discussion around strategy. But with the time that we have, we're going to focus really on those global philanthropic initiatives that each of you do so well and lead your organizations in doing well as it affects community and the quality of life. So that's where we're going to wade in, and I hope that our listeners and our viewers will really take a moment to seriously hear what's being said, because these are the transformers, the real transformers of the work that goes on in our community. We're going to delve a little bit into education. We'll talk about educational equity, but we're really going to focus on a special piece of education that I know is important to both of these ladies and their organizations. You might hear us talk a little bit about health, probably a little bit about COVID, and we'll touch base on what's being done around racial equity and inclusion, and then anything else these two ladies would like to share with you around strategy. So I'm going to take a breath and we're going to get started. So let's start with what I like to call, and I think that my colleagues here believe it as well. And that's what we like to call the great equalizer, and that's education. I want to just delve into there for a quick second. Both of your organizations have definite strategies around education, similar but different in many ways. But let's start with the one that's really the big passion for both of you, and that is early childhood education. Okay, as we like to say, the wee ones. How do we get started in this pipeline? There's a report that's been done by Greater Milwaukee Foundation. I'll call them GMF. It's called A Seat at the Table. If you haven't looked at it, I'm going to urge you to please look at that. It's an absolutely excellent publication that highlights the data and answers many of the questions around early childhood. It's my understanding that we have close to 40, get me right on this, 47,000 children under the age of 6 alone in Milwaukee, and it's not an equitable pipeline, and that's what I want to talk about. So Ellen, I'm going to jump in with you and then ask JoAnne to jump in with some really innovative and creative strategies that these two ladies both know around early education. So Ellen, tell us, what was the impetus behind the publication and the desire to really focus and invest in early childhood? What do those strategies look like?
Well, thank you, Joan. I do have to just take a moment to thank you for inviting me to Rotary. It's wonderful to be here, even on the big little screen. I think our overall goals are very much aligned in terms of moving our community forward, and your volunteerism and your focus on really important issues. And I just have to say, Joan, that I'm so honored to be on a panel that you are facilitating, because we all follow in your footsteps in many ways, and you have laid the path for all of us. And of course, I always love to be in the company of JoAnne, and we work so closely together. But it's also very odd to have a conversation about education, Joan, when you are moderating, because it's hard to think of any contributions that any of us make without the leadership and the groundwork that you have laid. So I just want to acknowledge that. So with regard to early, oh, I got some feedback.
We have a echo. If everyone could be those that are speaking.
Okay. So early childhood education. Ooh, this is gonna be tough if I have. It's hard enough to hear myself once, but twice.
There is a definite echo. Ellen, I don't know if you have headphones, and if not, okay, it seems like it's died down. Ellen, try again.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Greater Milwaukee Foundation, as you know, 105-year-old community institution focused on helping not only our donors make advances in the things that they care about, and education has always been a key issue for the foundation, both with our donors and with our discretionary resources. Early childhood education came out of our work with Milwaukee Succeeds, and our work in understanding that the biggest lever for change in young people's lives is starting early, right? Early childhood education has the biggest return on investment and sets young children up for long-term success. So we have been working on this for now 5 years, and the Seat at the Table research that you referenced really came out of a community advisory committee that was very broad-based, that we're all interested in the issue of early childhood education. And it's really the foundation commissioned the research, but it's really to inform the community about the state of early childhood education. And as you said, Joan, 47,000 children do not have access to quality early childhood education. And the research that was done by a national organization, IFF is the full name, really took a comprehensive look at what the issues were that contributed to the shortage and outlined some very specific strategies that we as a community could undertake. So, and really also underscored the fact that in certain neighborhoods, there were even greater shortages. Underserved neighborhoods, 6 zip codes were identified, 15,000 seats short for Black and Brown children in particular in certain zip codes, and a very strong shortage of infant and toddler seats. So our strategies, based on our foundation's commitment to advance racial equity, are really focused on those strategies. And they include grant making, capacity building, advocacy, public, we're engaged with a number of people around advocacy for public funds, understanding about the issues related to workforce, early childhood care and education. Teachers are some of the lowest paid individuals in the whole pipeline. And I think I'm going to invite JoAnne to join this because I know that she's been really deeply engaged with us from the beginning. But I think what the pandemic really underscored was how vital early childhood care and education is to our economy. So when people could not put their children in a safe place, they could not go to work. And so that even broadened the understanding of how important it is, not only to the children that we're trying to serve, but to their parents. And so that is actually even broadened the coalition that we are working on to really advance this issue.
Talking about that coalition, I'd like to bring JoAnne into this conversation because the one thing that I know about the two of you, and I don't know, maybe our listeners and viewers don't know, is that you work very closely together on issues. What I really look at is a true partnership and support to get things done. So I'm going to come back to that whole pipeline, but JoAnne, I know personally your passion around early childhood education. I've heard you talk about it. Talk to us. We want to hear from you about early childhood strategies that Herb Cole Philanthropies is engaged in and your partnership with GMF.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Someone just started banging outside my door doing some work, which is why I popped my headphones on so you wouldn't have to hear it. It's really great to be here. Education is the great equalizer. Our foundation is really rooted, got its starts as an education foundation. We support so many different things that are different sorts of supports in the K through 12 classrooms, as well as interventions. But we know that the real impact, the real opportunity for transformation is upstream. Ellen already started talking about the data and the difference that it makes when we invest early. There are 4 very big reasons why we here have tried to, first of all, just elevate the conversation so that more people are cognizant of the research. Thanks to GMF, they did the research and they're making it available far and wide. As well as just understanding it from all the different vantage points. Some people think about it as an education conversation or problem. Others need to, look at it as an economic, a workforce issue. And certainly COVID has exposed it for the urgency that it required in keeping our front line active and available during the pandemic. And certainly there are so many different players involved. There's the government with its subsidies and regulation. There are family in-home providers. There are big centers. And all of those partners, all of those entities really are coming together to try to figure out how do we move this sector. And so we want to be part of that in hoping to be able to create added opportunities. getting back to the question around strategies, first of all, I learned early on that we follow good leaders, and GMF has really been a leader on this in this conversation, and we found our way to it in a bunch of different ways. First, through Milwaukee Succeeds, which I think we'll probably talk about as we expand the conversation around broader education. Joan, you and I, through our work at the library. On that board of trustees, we certainly tried to push the conversation of early childhood education and what institutions like the library, what role they can play. And then, of course, philanthropy can play a role in looking for pockets of assistance that we can provide and leadership that we can also provide. So, for instance, there is this really wonderful program here in Milwaukee called the Leading Men Fellows, which GMF has supported, we have supported, and other foundations in town. What's remarkable about it is it really is an innovation that is all about the little people, but it's also about young men of color and putting them in a non-traditional workforce and pipeline to become educators, principally early childhood educators, but hopefully long-term educators. There's excellent data and research available that shows the difference that a male teacher as well as a male person of color as an educator and a role model in front of any student, but in particular our youngest, our littlest minds, that what the data shows is that the achievement gap starts to close. And it's innovation like that, it's research like that we want to look at and try to support. And it really is the most cost-effective and efficient use of dollars, both public and private dollars, in trying to boost outcomes, whether they're economic outcomes or health incomes for the individuals, but also societal outcomes.
What I hear, and I love this because we are talking strategies. What I hear is something that Ellen you'll hear her say this over and over and over again. We are better together. We are better together. And I clearly heard in both of your remarks, partnerships, coalition, working together. GMF can fill every void. Government can fill some voids. They can't fill every void. But together we can start to address some of those equity gaps in education. Early childhood, and as both of you have said, definitely the pandemic has showed us many more holes than even what we knew we had to address. But that pipeline needs to be addressed all the way. And JoAnne, I'm going to go back to you and just have you speak for a moment about some of those great things that Herb Cole Philanthropies is doing in that pipeline. You mentioned Milwaukee Succeeds, and I know GMF and Milwaukee Succeeds, brought that here for the discussion, for the community engagement. But you also recognize the work of teachers, JoAnne. Herb Cole Philanthropies recognizes the work of principals, recognizes, and I need you to really talk for a moment about one of my favorite programs. It's a great strategy, Learning Journeys. So JoAnne, talk to us about that.
Thank you, Joan. So I mentioned that we started as an education foundation long before I ever got into this role. Senator Cole really has been a significant contributor to young people's education through scholarship, and certainly his belief in teachers, both because they are sorely underpaid and also sorely under-recognized. That we fundamentally believe that the teaching profession gives birth to all other professions. Without it, we wouldn't have everything else in our economy and our society. And so being able to recognize the work that teachers do in every way possible really has been a key part of our strategy in where we will go first and foremost with our support and our interest in listening, learning, and partnering. So the Herb Cole Education Foundation has been around for 30 years, and certainly several years ago, now 6 years ago, when Senator Cole sold the basketball team, he made a significant investment. His first investment actually went to the Greater Milwaukee Foundation, thanks to Ellen's stewardship, for the arena. So the largest single gift that could ever be made in the state at the time was $100 million. An arena was built, and we're all the better for it, hopefully. But we came back and got right down to business in trying to figure out where the education gaps were and what initiatives we could support. And our very next gift went back to the Greater Milwaukee Foundation for Milwaukee Succeeds. And we continue to support initiatives like that because the infrastructure is already there. There's a great, strong partnership and collaboration. But then we also run some of our own programs. So you mentioned learning journeys. When there isn't a pandemic or, insurrections happening on the United States Capitol, we like to send thousands of kids to Washington, D.C. every single year. We know that in that small transaction of providing that opportunity to young people who might never otherwise be able to get out of our community and not only learn about our government, but also just get away, learn the responsibility and the opportunity of travel, what it means to keep your money to yourself and pack your bag and be on your own and figure out where you're going. We love providing that opportunity to young people in classrooms as well as youth organizations all around the state, but predominantly here in the Milwaukee area. And then we continue to recognize teachers and support teachers. I hope everyone on this Zoom knows that we love to flash fund classroom projects for teachers every single semester. And we just know that teachers, over 90% of teachers dig into their own pocket every single year to support their classrooms, and they shouldn't have to do it. So we step in and we try to do that. It's an easy transaction, but we know it's also transformational when teachers have better equipment, when they have access to new curriculum and new opportunities. And every single time teachers are doing it for their students, they're not doing it for themselves.
And a big strategy, they're not taking it out of their own pocket because Greater Milwaukee Foundation and Herb Cole Philanthropies wants to ease that part for them. Ellen, there is, I'm going to give you an opportunity to wade in any more on some of the things that JoAnne just attributed to the partnership around education. But I need to take your hand and walk around a community quality of life happening. I'm so excited about this, and I'll talk about it in just a second. I'm going to lead you into a conversation that many of us who grew up here are really excited about what is about to take place and what is happening. But any more comments from you on education?
Well, I just really value, obviously, the partnership that we have with Herb Cole Philanthropies. And it's as much as I would love to take credit for the funding of the teacher needs in the classroom, we are not financially a part of that. So I want to give all due credit where credit is due. But wonderful partnership with JoAnne all the way along on so many issues with regard to education. And she's always bringing innovative things to our partnership to advance. So thank you.
I hope our listeners and our viewers are hearing strategies, partnerships, looking for where the gaps are. You don't have to do it alone. We are better together. There are a number of us probably listening and viewing who grew up here or were here long enough to remember a certain segment of our community. As a kid, I used to walk over to what was Gimbel's Schuster and the Schuster building. And I have driven past, as most of us have, many times over the years, kind of saddened about the lack of restoration, a dilapidated building, and just wondering what could be. I, along with many of the your supporters, are so excited about GMF's partnering with community around a rebirth, not just of a building, but of a community. Ellen, tell us about it. That strategy for us is going to be such a key strategy in bringing about change and addressing many of these issues that we're talking about. Where are you going? Where's GMF going?
Thank you, Joan. And it is so exciting. This is really the most, in my tenure, the most transformational effort that the foundation has undertaken. And I have to give all due credit to our partner, John Raymond at the Medical College of Wisconsin, because his vision about a equitable, healthy Milwaukee for all began to drive our what has resulted in our partnership. So I'll go backwards a little bit and then I'll go forward. So backwards a little bit is that the foundation has been in Schlitz Park for 12 years. We have outgrown our space. We were beginning to look in other neighborhoods for places to move. We then engaged in a conversation really about how to use not only our administrative offices, but really be an embedded foundation in a community that we were committed to and trying to serve. So that resulted in our Thrive On effort, which is more than a building. I have to continually reinforce the fact that while our administrative offices are moving there, this is so much more than a building. It's so much more than our administrative offices. And that's why I'm so excited. So it is about a healthy, equitable Milwaukee for all. We have really a tripartite partnership. Kevin Newell from Royal Capital is our developer who graduated from Marquette, went through the ACRE program and has done a lot of development around Milwaukee. The Greater Milwaukee Foundation and MCW. So the foundation, GMF, will move its administrative offices there, but most importantly, we will have a comprehensive effort to embed ourselves in the community and invest in the surrounding community, in early childhood education, in health and wellness, in business development, and we have a partnership. We have been engaged all along with community residents. We view ourselves as additive to the neighborhood, and they are advising the strategies. So that has been a very transformational and really inspirational aspect of this project. And I can't tell you, Joan, how many people have those memories of having shopped at Gimbel's, Schuster's, and it's just wonderful how positive. And I can't wait for that siding to come down, because underneath of it is a gorgeous historic building.
Any idea, can you share with us anything on the timeline?
Yes, we hope to move in the second quarter of 22.
Great, we'll be looking forward.
Towards the end.
Towards the end. So I'll put in a quick plug that you may want to resurrect Tasty Town, which was the little bar, cafeteria that you could get a good hamburger at. So
can I just say one more word about this, and I don't want to take up all the time, which is that the first floor, MCW and GMF have committed to supporting programs, services that are informed by the neighborhood residents, stakeholders, and businesses on the first floor. So that will be a very unique space, which I think will add significantly, including a early childhood education center.
I think what we're hearing, hopefully our listeners and viewers, are that these two organizations work with community, not at community. They really look to fill in strategic gaps in our community, and that happens by partnering with each other. JoAnne, it would be great at some point when we are past COVID total restrictions, that group of learning, the next group of learning journey students get a great big picture at the building for Thrive On, because I think what the two of you do, particularly from a partnership standpoint, is absolutely fantastic. Let me just take you just a little bit into what I think we talked, you immersed in the conversation around COVID. And, you know, we don't have to, as they say, beat it to death. I hope that our conversations as we move through 21 won't always involve COVID. But your responses as a partnership, and you talked about that already, JoAnne, around what has been done around COVID. So the strategy, I think, though, is what's important. The programming is important, yes, but the strategy is so important. JoAnne, Herb Cole Philanthropies operates throughout the state. GMF focuses on a 4-county area, but I'm sure has opportunity funding where needed. But you specifically, and thank you, Senator Cole, operate throughout the state. Is that strategic? Tell us why the whole state and not just certain pockets, because it makes sense, but I want our viewers to understand, our listeners to understand your strategy.
Well, I would say every foundation has its own personality and benefactor or benefactors. For Senator Cole, he spent a career traveling and working in his family's business, which was situated all around the state. So, and then he went on to serve as a senator for 24 years. And so he really does believe in Wisconsin and feels a responsibility to help and continue to serve, even though people aren't voting for him anymore, that he still finds this way to serve the state. There are tremendous leaders. And so when we look for leadership here in our own community, GMF is one, the United Way is another. In as much as the GMF doesn't necessarily exist in every county around the state, the United Way almost exists throughout the state in multiple counties. And we look to them as another leader. So we can oftentimes filter our support strategically through their hyperlocal initiatives. What's different in Marathon County, obviously isn't the same here as what's happening in Milwaukee and the response that's needed to any of the urgent needs, COVID or otherwise. And so we look for those kinds of opportunities. I've used the word transactional a couple of times, and it always has a negative connotation. But a transaction like a scholarship or assistance to a community can also lead to transformation. And in Ellen's previous conversation around Thrive On, I would use the Thrive On initiative as one of those examples where we see the multiple steps or layers that can be put from the transaction to the transformation. And so where we try to take those things or try to support those things that oftentimes you can see, hear, touch, feel, and take pleasure and joy in knowing that there's some immediate impact that you just know that when you send a student to Washington, D.C., some good seeds are being planted. When you send a young person to college, good seeds are being planted. But you also know that when you layer a community, creating a culture of a community school around those students, or when you layer support through Teach for America, the teacher pipeline program that AmeriCorps helps, or when you layer the college coaching through College Possible, or when you layer that extra help that City Year fellows provide inside the classroom, we're putting all that on top of the student that got that scholarship or that's about to get that scholarship. And so that's the way we look at the strategies, both here in our backyard, in the classrooms, and then all around the state. We don't try to just spread peanut butter all over the place. We do try to, but we know that peanut butter is very nourishing. So when we provide it, we know that it's doing some good in the here and now as well.
And don't be surprised. I think if people could write in Senator Cole's name, they'd still vote for him. So you can go back and tell him that. I want to do a couple of things. Number one, get those questions in the chat. Rotarian Miller is going to walk us through the Q&A in just a few minutes. So type in those questions so that we're able to answer your questions with this great panel. And I'm going to try to slide in two different ones in the next 5 or 6 minutes that we have left. I'm going to start with Ellen, if I could. Ellen, we can't have a conversation, whether it's COVID, education, wonderful Thrive On, teachers, the work of schools, in this day and age, unless we talk about equity and inclusion, racial equity and inclusion. And I know that GMF waded in early on this issue and continues to work at it. It's one of those that you have to, if you're going to get in it, you're in it for the long term. Could you just share a little bit about the Racial Equity and Inclusion Initiative from GMF and your thoughts around it? And then JoAnne, I'll just ask you to weigh in and then I'll pose a final question. Ellen?
Well, thank you, Joan. And again, I have to go back to your leadership at the foundation, because this has been a journey that did not start in the last few years. It certainly didn't start, it's been going on for 20 years or more under your leadership, under the leadership of John Daniels at the board, Jackie Hurd-Barber, who you know. So we have been on a journey at the foundation to really advance first our understanding of the issues related to poverty, which I think was the precursor to our really understanding that wherever we went with regard to investment, whether it was in education, whether it was in economic inclusion, whether it was in housing, you didn't go very far before you ran into the issues of the impact of race on how and where people live and their quality of life, and now their health expectancy. So the systemic issues that this community faces around race are what the foundation is really trying to both acknowledge and advance strategies to address. These are not short-term issues, but to name the fact, as I really am very proud of the fact that Milwaukee County has named systemic racism as a public health issue. That is the first county that I know of in the country that has said that unless we address these issues, not only are we holding ourselves back from being a vital, thriving community, but we are really diminishing people's life expectancy, their quality of life, and their ability to really advance their own lives and the lives of their community. So in 2016, the foundation made what we refer to as a generational commitment to advance racial equity. And it is now our North Star. And so all the things that we have talked about today, we use a racial equity lens to try and advance our commitment. So we use our financial resources in a very different way. We use our communication strategy. We do research to help inform the community on the data, if you will, of how it is and what the aspects are of being a person of color, Black or Hispanic or other person of color, and what the disparities are with regard to employment, wealth, home ownership, housing, health. And what we're trying to invest in is strategies that will help advance our entire community beyond that. So I hope some of you saw our new strategic vision that we launched in December, a Milwaukee for All. And we know that as the foundation, there is no way that we as a single institution can possibly take this on ourselves. So we invite everyone to join us in this effort. It will take all of us, and part of it is the recognition that we really have to reimagine philanthropy. We have to invite a more diverse group to the table and to shift the decision-making and power to those who are affected by the decisions that we make.
Thank you. JoAnne, let me give you an opportunity to weigh in, and then I'm going to lead us to our final question.
Ellen said it perfectly when she said it's a lens, and certainly their leadership in pointing everyone, the community, towards a North Star. For us, it's not a standalone conversation or subject. It really is that lens that we try to apply to everything that we do. We listen a lot and we ask a lot of questions. And we're not just asking the questions of you, we're asking the questions of ourselves. When we go into a virtual or real room, who else is in it?
Yes.
Where are our dollars going? And when they get there, who's receiving them? What does that staff look like? What does that board look like? What do the customers, the people who are being served look like? And and asking the questions and then looking for the answers. There's your gut, there's anecdote, and then there's data, as Ellen said. And we try to listen to all three of those things because they're all really important. We also like to look at the language. So, I think when people hear the word grassroots, they immediately think small. When Ellen described the Thrive On relationship with the community and where those conversations have really taken hold, they're at the grassroots level, which in what they're trying to do, grassroots actually has been flipped on its head to be really big and impactful, not small. And so we look at what comfort level we have with risk, and we're willing to take it on, new organizations, new ideas. There's a lot of great old, long-standing sort of organizations in our community that have proven themselves time and again, but there are a lot of new ones out there too. And so redefining what risk means, right? And I just, anecdotally want to say, when I think about like what COVID did and how quick funders were to respond, but even more so how people in our community were to respond. And so being able to see, there are these two amazing women at Metcalf Park Community Bridges, this little teeny organization that maybe no one on this call or very few on this call are familiar with. There are two women there in that community, in the Metcalf neighborhood, one of our most underserved neighborhoods and very vulnerable neighborhood. The two women in response to COVID just sprang into action, and they were door to door. They were doing more than government or anyone else could possibly do. And so for us, it was just really easy to say, keep doing more. Let's get you the resources and the help so that you can keep doing what you need to do. And so when I think about Danelle and Melody over at Metcalf Park, they introduced us to a whole new way of just quickly, nimbly, and in a trusted fashion, getting in front of people and delivering help more immediately and more impactfully than any, I think, other person in our community could have done any better. So that's just one example, and there were so many more, and it speaks to then the COVID response effort that really took place over this past year and changed the way that we all come together very quickly to put our resources together as well as leverage separately and get out of the way. So trying to not have complicated granting, not have extensive reporting, and not making people sort of wait around for the mystery of what funders or government do. Everyone really showed up, and it needs to continue on into the future.
I love that, just get out of the way. I think that's good. We're going to, believe it or not, we're out of time, but we're going to forego the last question because guess what? We're getting questions in the chat. And I think it's important that we try to address a couple of those questions. I'm going to close out and say to both of you that when it comes to strategies, we've heard it today, we have a list of strategies, partnering, looking for gaps. What are the gaps in the system and who can you partner with to fill those gaps? Strategic commitment. Ellen said we need to rethink philanthropy. Working with community, not at community. What a strategy, huh? Communicating, engaging, and seeing the whole picture. A Milwaukee for all. A Wisconsin for all. So Ellen, JoAnne, thank you. Thank you for this part of the conversation. I'm going to turn it over to President Miller because he's going to take us through the Q&A. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you, Dr. Prince. First, I just want to say what an honor it is to have the three of you take the time out of what is arguably a busy schedule for all of you to be with us today. Certainly in a world with no shortage of negativity, it warms my heart to know that our city has three of the brightest minds fighting for our kids and the most vulnerable among us with the passion that we can see that you all possess. So with that, I'm going to jump right in and try to get through as many of these questions as I can. First, a question from member Christine Henricks to Ellen. Can you talk specifically about the actions planned to mitigate the effects of gentrification around your new neighborhood?
Sure. Thanks for the question. In any situation like that, gentrification is always a risk. So the foundation is a partner in another community-wide effort called Milwaukee United, under the auspices of the Greater Milwaukee Committee. And we have formed a very small and strategic anti-displacement fund for long-term homeowners on the south side that has experienced certain zip codes on the south side that are experiencing the pressures of gentrification, and in the areas around Halyard Park and in the Bronzeville, Harambe neighborhoods. It is a very modest and strategic intervention, and we are working on an effort to broaden that because it is a critically important issue to not cause displacement at the same time that you're benefiting from economic development in underinvested neighborhoods.
Fantastic. The next question comes from Alex Cho. What is the greatest unfulfilled need in philanthropy today? I guess that's for either of you to answer.
Go for it, JoAnne.
Ooh, what's the greatest unfulfilled need in philanthropy? I think I would say, I would go back to our earlier conversation around if we're looking outward or into the community, early childhood education. I think that really, in light of the prioritization that it's receiving, and even just the conversations that are taking place around infrastructure and what is and what isn't infrastructure, you know, our country is going through, you know, a moment, and I think redefining infrastructure beyond bridges and airports and really thinking about human capital and people and investing in people and following where there is proven data and science. You know, I came out of government, and Senator Cole also spent a considerable amount of time in government, and government has its strengths, and you know, obviously has a, you know, some of the slowness and the responsiveness to election cycles and budgets that have to be adhered to. Philanthropy can be more nimble and can be more agile, but if you put those things together and harness what the government can do really, really well, what philanthropy can do really, really well, and look a little bit beyond the next election or what sounds good today on TV, you know, a lot of important change can take place. So I would say, and I'm not sure, Alex, if that was the nature of your question, but I'm going to stick with my answer to pretty much any question these days is early childhood education.
So true. Speaking of capital, we've got a great question from member Teresa Regan. She asks, as millions of dollars come from Wisconsin to Wisconsin from the American Recovery Act, are you providing guidance to the mayor and others who on where the dollars should be directed?
I'll jump in for a quick second. You know, what's great about all the different teams of people that have been working together over this past year is those teams continue to work together and strategize around what is happening at the state level, what's happening coming down through the federal level, and certainly locally with Ellen, with us, with other foundations and other community partners on what's needed and what needs to happen right now while we wait to see what comes from the state and or the federal government. But yes, I think there are lots of opinions, and what's great is in each of these teams that have taken shape around economic recovery and health and education and so on, there are a lot of members from deep in the community who are given the opportunity and weighing in with things that we couldn't otherwise know or have access to. And so there's that collective conversation that's taking place, and I know is bubbling up to the leaders who I think are really paying attention and seeing the opportunity, again, in this moment where there are significant resources coming both to Wisconsin and to Milwaukee. So yes, in the short answer, yes, there is, I think, advice and lots of conversations taking place.
Really is about opportunity and resources, of course. Member Jeff Martinka with another question for Ellen. Can you talk a little bit about the Family Foundation and nonprofits who use GMF services to shepherd or steward their money? Is it a surprising number? I think including us at NH.
Well, thank you for the question. Yes, shepherding and securing and helping individual donors and their families fulfill their charitable goals is fundamental to the foundation's 100-year history. The work that we're doing now around these very more robust collaborative efforts is a add-on to what will always be a fundamental purpose of the foundation. I think we, well, I will share with you that the foundation ended what year are we in? Ended 2020, and we have over $1 billion now in assets. And it's really, you know, these are the community's assets for the future. And what we are trying to do is really engage not only the cross-section of the community, but individual donors in building a community foundation for the future, building a Milwaukee, building a region for the future. So we couldn't do it without individual donors. We couldn't do it without the trust that's been built up over many, many years. So I don't know whether that answers the question exactly, but it is still very fundamental to our work.
That's an amazing figure and a lot of great work that can be done. We have another good question here from Rotarian John Hine. How does Cole's Charities measure results?
Oh, that's a really good question, and it's so hard to do. I did just say that we do our best not to require, you know, extensive 50-page reporting from organizations. I'm guessing that there are even some participants in today's Zoom who on occasion have been surprised that we send you funding before you even ask for it. And it's true. Sometimes we just know how good a mission is in Milwaukee, and that we're not going to help an organization completely fulfill their mission, but we know that the work is good, we know the work is true, and we want to support it. So sometimes we don't even need reporting and to measure results, because we know the organizations are carrying forward, growing the people that they serve. One of the places that I can think of is like community health centers, something that we supported for a long time legislatively in Washington, that we took with us into philanthropy to make sure that our community health centers, which are not-for-profits, have the funding that they need to respond, especially in these uncertain times, but also when we have very specific issues like asthma, lead paint, et cetera. And so that's just one example of where we might not measure results, because I know, and I see Jenny Sevenich is responding. Jenny is at Progressive Health Centers, community health centers are going to, she's going to measure, and she's going to provide that data to us, and it's easy. But it gets trickier, you know, when we support our schools, because year over year, we want to see progress. We want to invest in couple of things. We want to invest in the strategy, but we also want to invest in the leaders who are providing, you know, a school with a strategy and not a good leader isn't going to work. And so we like to invest in both. We like to see the strategy, but we want to make sure to see the good leadership there year over year. And so, you know, we have some really amazing schools and some amazing leaders, and where we don't, we want to invest in trying to build up that talent pipeline and that leadership pipeline. And so it's really looking at both the student results, but also getting to know the leader intimately, really spending a lot of time with them and their teams to understand where they're taking a school, because they're never going to be able to do it in 1 year. So making sure that we see that consistency, making sure that we are asking questions about their year over year progress on whatever it is that they've decided to engage us with. And we have a lot of stars in Milwaukee. It's not all bad news out there, folks. There's some really great things happening in education.
Well, I certainly think we could have set aside 2 hours for this program. There's still questions in the chat, but we are out of time. I really appreciate the conversation. Dr. Prince, Ellen, JoAnne, can never thank the three of you enough, and the organizations that you represent, for your unwavering commitment to the advancement of equity, not only in our community, but being really a glowing example of truth and fairness, which Rotary is built on to our state and beyond. So again, thank you all for being here. In honor of the leaders like yourselves who speak to our club members, we will be making a donation in your names to the YWCA Southeast Wisconsin, whose mission is eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. Thank you again for being with us today. Looking ahead to next week, join us in person. I said it correctly, in person, or via the live stream to hear from Marty Brooks on the expansion of the Wisconsin Center. Hope to see you all this coming Thursday at our snack program or in Memorial Hall next Tuesday. Our meeting is adjourned.